Welcome to AI Journal Club, the digital pathology podcast segment where we take a closer look at the research shaping AI in pathology. This episode is one of our AI-powered summaries series, AI-generated deep dive into a paper worth your attention. It's curated from our weekly DigiPath Digest live stream that I run every Friday morning. I'm Dr. Alex Żuraw, and this is your shortcut to stay current. Let's dive into it.
Welcome back to the Digital Pathology Podcast, Trailblazers. I'm your host, and today we are jumping into a really fantastic Journal Club deep dive. We're looking at a groundbreaking paper from the Annals of Oncology.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm really thrilled to be here for this one. This paper by Chang, Calderaro, and their international team is, well, it's frankly trying to solve one of the most frustrating diagnostic puzzles in liver cancer.
Right, the AI to CCA model. And to really understand why this is a big deal, I want you, the listener, to just imagine a patient lying in a hospital bed. They just got biopsied for a mass in their liver.
A really scary moment for anyone.
Exactly. So the digitized slide goes under the microscope. And it is undeniably an adenocarcinoma. But instead of, immediately drawing up a targeted chemo plan or prepping for surgery, the entire clinical team just hits pause.
They hit a total wall. They have to order a colonoscopy. They order an upper GI endoscopy. They schedule a full-body PT scan.
Which takes weeks. And why? Because looking at that slide, the human pathologist literally cannot definitively tell if this tumor started in the liver's bile ducts. An intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma or ICCA, or if it's a metastatic colon or gastric cancer that just happened to land in the liver.
Yeah, and that is the ultimate clinical bottleneck in hepatobiliary oncology right now. We're essentially forcing a patient with a brand new cancer diagnosis to undergo this massive battery of invasive, expensive scopes.
Just to rule things out.
Exactly. Simply because human morphology has reached its absolute limit. You just can't see the difference.
So looking at these routine digitized slides, it's kind of like trying to tell identical twins apart, right? Except one is a local resident, the ICCA, and the other is just visiting from out of town, the metastasis.
That is a perfect way to put it. They both form these irregular glandular structures. They both provoke this intense fibrotic desmoplastic reaction in the surrounding stroma. They both secrete mucin.
So functionally identical.
Pretty much, yeah. On a standard H&E stain slide, the primary liver tumor and the metastatic invader look exactly the same.
But I guess my question is, why does this ambiguity actually matter so much for the patient right in that moment? Can't we just treat the liver mass?
Well, no, because you cannot treat a metastatic colorectal cancer with the same systemic therapy you'd use for primary biliary cancer. The mutation profiles, the targeted therapies, surgical protocols, they're entirely divergent pathways.
Wow, okay. So the stakes are incredibly high.
Yeah, the burden of proof totally falls on the pathologist to rule out an occult primary tumor somewhere else in the gut before anyone dares to treat it as a primary ICCA.
Which causes that massive delay. So since human experts are, fundamentally limited by that visual overlap, Chang and Calderaro turned to machines. And they didn't just build a standard AI from scratch, right?
Right. They ran a huge architecture bake-off. They took retrospective data from 544 patients across 5 European centers, and they basically pitted 3 advanced deep learning foundation models against each other.
So it was Kranzpath paired with Histobistro, Unini paired with Clam, and Consietzi paired with Titan.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is the progression in how these models learn. Older models relied heavily on manually annotated pathology patches, but foundation models like UNI and TNCH, they are trained via self-supervised learning on millions of unannotated whole slide images.
So they kind of learn the intrinsic visual language of human tissue without our biases telling them what to look for.
Yeah, exactly.
And when I saw they tested CONCH in there, I was super interested because CONCH leverages visual language multimodal training. It maps gigapixels of tissue directly to pathology report.
Right. It associates that specific glandular formation mathematically with the clinical text describing it, which gave it a distinct ed here.
And to process the whole slide, they use multiple instance learning, or MIL, right?
Yeah, MIL. So the slide's broken down into thousands of smaller tiles. The Cholangiocarcinoma encoder looks at each patch, and then the Titan aggregator acts like an attention mechanism, pulling all those insights together to make a slide-level diagnosis.
And out of the 3, the CHONCH and Titan combination was the winner for this European data set.
It was. It achieved an area under the receiver operating characteristic curve, an A or OC of 0.840.
Okay, let's unpack this right here. Because an ARC of 0.840 is, well, it's a solid B grade. It's great for a research poster. But if I'm the patient, I do not want a model that is just pretty good making calls about my liver cancer. I mean, an 84% is kind of terrifying in a clinical setting.
Oh, absolutely. That gap between a neat research algorithm and a deployable, safe clinical tool is where most pathology AI projects just die.
Right. So how did the authors bridge that gap? How would they stop it from just guessing?
Well, they recognize that forcing a prediction on highly ambiguous tissue is a fatal flaw. So to make AI2CCA safe, they engineered a way for the model to actually measure its own uncertainty.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They implemented a confidence assessment system using something called generalized Odin, or GEOM.
I really want to break down how GEODIN calculates that uncertainty, because reading the paper, this felt like the secret sauce.
It totally is the secret sauce. So it relies on a metric called predictive entropy. Okay. When a neural network makes a classification, it outputs a probability distribution across the possible classes using a math function called softmax.
Right, the softmax function.
Yeah. So if the AI looks at a slide and it aligns perfectly with its learned representation of ICCA, the output might be 99% ICCA and 1% metastasis.
Meaning the probability is sharply peaked?
Exactly. In mathematical terms, that state has extremely low entropy. The model is highly confident.
But when it looks at a slide where the stroma and the glands are just completely ambiguous, the distribution flattens out, right?
Yes. The output might hover around 52% ICCA and 48% metastasis. The internal state of the model is chaotic. That is high predictive entropy. It is literally the quantifiable manifestation of the AI being confused.
Okay, it's like a medical student taking a multiple choice test. Instead of blindly guessing and getting penalized, the student is allowed to just leave the hardest questions blank. They only answer the ones they are 100% sure about.
That's exactly it. And GEODIN applies temperature scaling to that softmax function, which amplifies the difference between a genuinely confident prediction and one that's just noise.
So it draws a hard mathematical line.
Right. It says any slide with predictive entropy above this threshold just will not receive a diagnosis.
And the results of doing that were dramatic, weren't they?
Beyond dramatic. By filtering out those low-confidence, high-entropy guesses, the model's AUROC skyrocketed from 0.840 up to 0.958.
That's a massive jump. But the really huge thing for you trailblazers listening, the metric that actually changes practice is the false positive rate. By using that threshold, the false positive rate dropped to absolute zero.
Zero. Not a single time did the AI confidently misclassify a metastasis as an ICCA or vice versa. When it said it was sure, it was flawless.
But there's a trade-off, right?
Yeah, there is. The model only retained 46% of the samples for these high-confidence predictions. It essentially flagged the remaining 54% as too ambiguous, requiring standard human review.
Which, honestly, we need to contextualize what retaining 46% actually means. Right now, practically every patient with this biopsy goes into that clinical bottleneck for endoscopies.
Every single one.
Right. So if AI2CCA can definitively safely clear 46% of those patients immediately, I mean, nearly half the patients could skip the scopes and fast track right to treatment.
It basically halves the clinical backlog overnight without compromising safety for the other half.
Unbelievable. But, and I have to play devil's advocate here, retrospective data is safe and controlled. The slides are archived, the variables are known.
And real-world clinical data is incredibly messy. AI models usually degrade fast.
Exactly. So to truly change clinical practice, they needed a prospective test, right?
They did. To prove the model wasn't just over-indexed on European lab stains, they ran a phase 2 prospective validation. They locked the model and tested it on 161 brand new patients arriving at 4 international centers in France, India, and South Korea.
And testing in Asia is a profound stress test. I mean, the underlying etiology of ICCA in Western populations is often sporadic, but in parts of India and Korea, it's driven by endemic risk factors like hepatitis B or liver flukes, right?
Like Opus thorchis vivarini, which means the background liver tissue surrounding the tumor looks fundamentally different.
The AI isn't just looking at the cancer. It has to navigate through heavy cirrhosis, severe chronic inflammation, processed with totally different chemical H&E stains.
Yeah. If the foundation model had only memorized the tint of a Parisian lab, it would have collapsed in Seoul. But the prospective results were stunning. In the French cohort, the high-confidence predictions hit a perfect AUROC of 1.0.
Literally perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And in the Asian cohort, navigating those totally different disease backgrounds, it achieved an AUROC of 0.965. Across the entire prospective series, the model made exactly one misclassification on its confident predictions.
Wait, really? Just one?
Just one error across international borders, distinct genomic populations, and different scanner hardware.
That proves it actually learned the fundamental biological morphology, not just a local shortcut.
Yeah.
And the G-Odin system caught the model's uncertainty globally.
It really is a masterclass in engineering clinical safety into deep learning. They've built a confidence-based biomarker that works on routine H&E slides.
No extra genomic sequencing, no waiting weeks for specialized stains.
Just rapid, accurate triage right when the biopsy is digitized. It has the immediate potential to eliminate unnecessary gastrointestinal investigations for nearly half of these patients.
So synthesizing this for the trailblazers listening today, Chang, Calderaro, and their team have essentially created a high-speed lane for diagnosing liver cancer safely.
Absolutely.
But it leaves us with a really provocative thought to end on. We always talk about AI trying to replace the human diagnostic process. But if a model like AI2CCA perfectly triages the easy 46%, the routine cases just disappear from your queue.
Yeah, your daily workload becomes hyper-concentrated.
Exactly. When the AI is designed to know what it doesn't know, the human isn't the primary screener anymore. The human becomes the ultimate biological arbiter. You dedicate all your cognitive bandwidth to the 54% of cases that are so ambiguous they terrify the machine.
You become the ultimate safety net.
It's a massive shift in how we work. Something to mull over before your next shift. Thank you, Trailblazers, for joining this Journal Club session of the Digital Pathology podcast, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
That's it for this AI Journal Club episode. If you want more like this, make sure you're subscribed to the Digital Pathology podcast and come join us for the DigiPath Digest, our weekly live session. During these live streams, you can vote which paper becomes an AI deep dive. And if you're serious about digital pathology, grab my free book at digitalpathologyplace.com. This is the best place to start your digital pathology journey. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.